It's Tri. Wait a minute. It's Tri-City Sports Now. I'll say it. I'll get it right here. Want to mention the passing of ETSU athlete Ernie Farrell Bowman. Passed away on Sunday, age of 84. A guy who always got a Christmas card from Willie Mays. Played for the San Francisco Giants, 1961 to 63. We mentioned how he tutored Tom Seaver. We mentioned coaching some locals in a Mason-Dixon league. Mentioned how, in addition maybe to that sage advice giving Tom Seaver, don't save your fastball. Don't be cutesy. Throw it, Use it. That's your out pitch. Don't hesitate to use it. Also, I think was very instrumental with his play in getting ETSC from a school that played the Milligans, the Tusculums, which is what they played back in the 40s and 50s, let's face it, to in 54 playing Arizona State, which like them was a NAIA team then. I'm talking about in Kansas City in the NAIA tournament, but making Madison Brooks back in those days say, hey, you know what? We could be NCAA, we could be Ohio Valley. Now, I talked a little bit on this show about last year, 1956, it was 56-57, and Bowman's last year with the Bucks, I believe, was 56. So he was not on the 1956-57 ETSU team, or it was ETSC back then, forgive me, that played in a tournament called the Watauga Invitational. And it is my opinion because after 54 and the NAIA tournament, ETSU did apply to the Ohio Valley Conference for membership. They got turned down. And then, after Bowman had graduated, starring career, then went on to play baseball, Major League Baseball. Certainly there's more money in baseball at that time than pro basketball. The NBA, I'm not sure that he ever would have been a prospect there in the first place. I don't know of his skills in relation to what the NBA was back then in an era of Minneapolis Lakers and St. Louis Hawks and Syracuse Nationals. I just, forgive me, I don't know. But I would point out that in 1956, ETSC scheduled a tournament. It was called the Watauga Invitational. And among the schools they invited were Marshall, who had just made the NCAA tournament, and Hal Greer had played for them and was still on the team, as well as Ohio, which was a very good team as well. And I believe both teams were in the MAC at that time. Mid-American Conference. And as I said, Marshall the year before had made the NCAA tournament. And as I recall, ETSU beat both these teams or in the Watauga Invitational. I check the records on that, but it's in the media guide if you so desire. But I remember Greer was held to 14 points. Okay, now by this time it's a year after Bowman. I should be mentioning this. But I've wondered if Greer's presence playing in Johnson City, because the ETSC sports then were not yet integrated, but saying, yes, we will play Hal Greer at that time wasn't the final step of, well, they can actually play with these good teams. Marshall and all this, they can actually play with them, but they're also willing to have black players, African-American players, play in Johnson City. That's not a problem. And I've always wondered if that was the final step to ETSC becoming an NCAA team in the Ohio Valley Conference. They would join the following year, 57-58. And again, started with the play, the success that Bowman and his teammates had led them to, but then capped off with, yes, we are ready to enter modern times. It was kind of, because I read the old newspaper stories, Johnson City Press in 1956, and boy, the press was harder hitting back then than they are now. I got to tell you that. I would read editorial comments, editorials. Why do we have segregation? What's this all about? Why do we have that? The Johnson City Press at the time had no problem, for instance, giving Langley High School, which was the black high school. Schools are still segregated in the 50s in Tennessee. They had no problem giving Langley all the press in the world. And excuse me, it's Langley or Langston? Forgive me, I'm began with an L, folks. I'm sorry, it's a little before my time, but I do remember reading it. And I think Langston, correct? It was Langston, and I'm getting Langley confused. That's a high school in Pittsburgh, okay, so forgive me. But Langston, just like I get... Anyway. Langston was defeating, at this time, Elizabethton by like 100 points when they were playing basketball. I mean, it was, you were looking at these scores, and it's, Langston wins 123-21 against the Cyclone. That is not an exaggeration. So again, it was this sort of era in which, there was a demand to end the segregation of the time. And ETSC, I think, helped do that by having that Watauga Invitational and Hal Greer come to town. And the other, I remember reading back in those times, way back when, 1956, is that the press, they ran a picture of Hal Greer in the paper, but they didn't make a big deal of, the great African-American, I think back then you would have called in the 50s, Negroes, things like that, terms like that, listen to me. But it wasn't like, here's the African-American player on Marshall. No, it wasn't like that. They just ran his paper and like everybody else, which is the way it should be. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and some ETSC going on U history. Moving on. Hey, back August 3rd, that would have been Saturday, I believe. Micah Kazor is anyway, no, excuse me, it would have been August 2nd. So August 2nd would have been Friday. Micah Kazor got his first start for the Boise Hawks with the Colorado Rockies, and actually threw pretty well. Micah Kazor, the former ETSU product, who played 4 games for River City Rascals, Frontier League, independent baseball, and then got signed by the Rockies. Rockies like fastball pitchers. Ernie Bowman, Tom Seaver, see where we're all going here? Anyway, but Micah Kazor, in defeat, he took the L in a 5-0 loss, but he did pitch well. 6 innings, 1 run, that's all, 3 hits in this Northwest League game, that's short season A, obviously Eugene and Boise out in the Great Pacific Northwest. But I wanted to mention that. So that means that, I guess, tomorrow it would be that Kazor would be scheduled to pitch once again for the Boise Hawks. There you go. And all this. A couple of other things, I guess, talking about staying with the baseball theme. Last week also, and here's where we go. This is kind of interesting that I see this. And I wonder what direction it'll take. This has been a very, very newsworthy week. But you have, or just really 2 weeks. Donald Trump, the president, tweeting about Baltimore. By this time, you know what he said. And then, over the weekend, the shootings. And everyone has an opinion on them. Going back before the shootings, remember that simpler time? There were a couple of fans who went to an Orioles game. And remember, there was all this, okay, were these tweets racist? Wait a minute, these, Elijah Cummings himself had tweeted out similar things. There are also, what about this rat problem in Baltimore? Boy, Baltimore really, really took a hit. I've been to Baltimore. I've always thought it was right there in the harbor. What a nice city and all this. It's got some bad infrastructure, evidently. A couple of fans went to the ball game last week, and they unfurled a banner. that said Trump 2020. I'm going to put up the picture here on Facebook if you can see it. There it is. I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often, to tell you the truth. Now, if you read the rules of fan behavior, although I know that you could like wear a campaign button into a ball game or something. You're not supposed to have a banner that is political. We can debate what a political banner is, but I'm pretty well sure that Trump 2020 is a political banner. And I understand that. Don't you? But here's the question. We are now at a time where it is being supported that the athletes have them be political. Have them be able to make political statements, that sort of thing. Now, I think that there is a thinly veiled message that the people who say this want them to make political statements that agree with their own beliefs. But nevertheless, that's the thing. You know, the athlete, you want them to be a role model. Why should they ignore a tragedy like a shooting? Why should an Orioles player, what does he think about the president saying that the city that he plays in isn't all that nice? And why do you think he is tweeting this out? Legitimate question. People are talking about it, you know. Athletes want to be known more than for their statistics and their name in a box score. I get it. But while I also get why you don't want to have at a ball game, vote for Trump, vote for his opponent, vote for the Democrat candidate for mayor, vote for the Republican candidate, vote for the Libertarian candidate, you know, whatever. I understand totally why you would want to not have that as the Baltimore Orioles. Question. The NBA certainly has encouraged its players to become more political. Okay. I do think that with the political climate of the NBA, they run the risk of alienating half the country. But nevertheless, if you're going to say the athletes themselves can make political statements, at what point does it come out that the fans themselves should not have their political banners taken away? Now, that's the NBA. But certainly, it could very easily trickle down to baseball as well. I wonder if in the future, be that in a year, be that in 5 years or 20 or 100, if actually we will be having political banners on there, because I can't see where you can say, let the athletes make the statement, let them voice their opinion, let them be human beings, and then not give fans the same right. I'm Marky Billson, Tri-City Sports Now. Got more basketball, old basketball story here coming back.
Doors at Napa Auto